Good morning, everyone, on this terribly, terribly cold morning, but that helps illustrate some of the points I'm going to make today about how to get your perennial seeds to actually germinate. Last time we talked about annual seeds, and their only job is to germinate, live for a year, and create as many blooms and seeds as possible, because perennials only bloom for their particular period. Now, some are long blooming and some will rebloom if you deadhead them, but their job is to stay alive. So that's what's the most important thing to them, is their survival, because they don't make as many seeds because they don't bloom as long. So they have a lot of protective measures. Native plants in this area often have something that coats them that prevents them from germinating until they've been through several freeze, thaw, and that cover washes off. One of the most the easiest one to think about is the Jack in the Pulpit. The Jack in the Pulpit has those big red berries after you get the pulpit part. And those red berries are covered with something that's both a skin irritant, but also a protective coating so that they can't germinate until we've gone through the winter. These are survival mechanisms that these plants have created. And the survival mechanism also spreads to the way in which a lot of perennials are spread, like the bloodroot, which has a coating on the outside to protect it from germinating. And that tastes very good to ants. So ants will take those seeds into their tunnels and they will eat the elaiosome, which is what that outside coating is called. And then that's why you get your seeds that sprout in your walls, in your stairs, or if you look down from up in the top of your garden and look over, you'll see an S or whatever pattern the anthill has evolved into, because they'll come up at different spots. So that's a protective mechanism for the plants. Other protective mechanisms to prevent the competition within a particular area is an anti-germination chemical that's in the seed coatings usually. One of those, an annual, the easiest one to think about, is sunflower seeds. If you put sunflowers out and you let the seeds fall on the ground, nothing else will grow around it because they're protecting themselves from competition. Now, there are several things that you have to be cognizant of, and this is why you have to do a little bit of research before you plant some perennials, but you should do it for all perennials to make sure you're giving them what they want, the conditions that are the most salubrious to germination. The cold seed starting workshop is based to help those seeds germinate, because they're outside in the cold and they go cold, warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, and that helps break their dormancy. That can be done very easily by putting some vermiculite, damp vermiculite, and the seeds in a plastic bag in your refrigerator. That's the smallest footprint you can get. If you want to if you have an extra refrigerator, you can put seed trays that have the seeds in there already. And most of the seeds that need cold stratification need about 6 weeks of cold stratification. And then that helps them break dormancy. As I said, that's a lot of native perennials, although you will find some that are great, like some of the Asclepias will just go right in your seed starting tray, and you may even get flowers this year. There are not too many perennials that do that. They need to get the green working so that they can do the photosynthesis, so that they can build up enough energy to set flowers. Flowering is, again, it's a survival mechanism. It's if you treat plants too well, they will not necessarily feel the need to flower, because they don't have to create seeds, because they're very happy campers and they're really satisfied where they are. So if you treat them a little bit badly, they'll bloom, because it's a survival mechanism to produce offspring. The other thing about perennial seeds, when you buy them, or even annual seeds, if you buy them and it says on the seed packet what it is, that's fine. But if you collect them in your yard and you have, say, what's something easy? If you have something that's in the same genus and species, or even just genus, that can be pollinated by another plant that's in your yard, then you're going to get a hybrid, and it's not going to come true to either one of those two parents. If you have, here you go, if you have a black tomato, black crim, which is my favorite, and it's next to a brandywine, and they're pollinating each other, you're not going to get, next year, you're not going to get a black crim, and you're not going to get a brandywine. You're going to get a hybrid of those two tomatoes. That's why when people ask me, can I save the seeds for my tomatoes? Well, yes, that's fine, but you're not necessarily going to get what you think you're going to get when they come out the other side. So one of the first thing is seed stratification. Check and see. In some places where you'll get your seeds will actually say if they haven't sprouted within a month, because perennials take longer to sprout, then cold stratify them, put them in the refrigerator for 3 or 4 weeks, and then pull them out again. Just easier to do the cold stratification first in a plastic bag with some vermiculite to keep the seeds moist. And if you have old seeds that you're not sure if they're going to germinate, take a wet paper towel, put some of the seeds on that paper towel, fold it over, put it in a plastic bag. A week later, open that up, see how many seeds have germinated. If you have 10 seeds, and 5 of them germinated, you're going to get a 50% germination rate when you put them into cells. So you'll want to put more seeds in each cell to make sure that you get the germination. If you have 9 out of 10, then you're going to get a 90% rate. So you know you can sow them a little less densely because you'll get more germination. Some seeds, and even some annual seeds, need to be, well, they don't need to be, but they'll germinate more quickly if they're soaked first. That's what we're doing here with the seeds in here. This is a rose-colored canna that was done on, what do we got here? 2.5, and it's soaking and it gets planted next. Now, you can see it's in water. The other thing, though, that you can do with canna seeds, and these are nice and warm because they've been in here and they're toasty. There are 2 other things you can do with seeds that the word that you'll see on the seed packet is scarify. And what that is this, if you can see it, it's a fairly large seed with a very hard coating. So soaking helps with it, or you can scarify it by taking it and rubbing it against a nail file or a piece of sandpaper, and you just rub the outer coat, and that will break the outer coat, allowing more moisture in. Oops. The other thing you can do, although I've never done this, and this works with your, if you use, oh gosh, right out the window. It's an annual that's a vining annual, and it has big seeds. Tropleum. Okay, anyway, what you can do is you nip with a pair of nippers, you nip the tip of the bulb of the seed and break that hard barrier to help you get to a point where that seed could absorb moisture. Just like in annuals, you're going to have to check and make sure that does it want light? Does it want heat? What are the needs of this plant? And you do the same thing that you're going to do with annuals, is try to keep plants with the same needs, the same heat and the same light requirement in a single tray or in a single container. Wait one sec. This is another great tray to put seeds in that are going to be really fine, and you don't want to seed that way because you're afraid you're going to clump them too much. One thing you can do with tiny seeds is wet the end of a pencil tip and pick it up and drop it in, or the tip of a label, and do it that way. But these are really good. You use a lighter, less clumpy soil mix with this so that you can separate the roots more easily. And because the holes are so large, I put a half piece of paper towel on the bottom to keep the soil from falling out. But that's one way to do it. And then if you have a bunch of these, you can take one out and even replace it with another one in your setup so that you can have more plants growing at once. So that's a lot of the, that's pretty much the basics of how to start seeds that are perennial seeds and that have requirements like stratification or scarification. They sound the same, you know, they sound very similar, but scarification is just sanding the outside or nipping the outside off. And stratification is in and out of the refrigerator to give it the cold that it needs. There's several books. I don't know if they're still available, but this one is particularly on growing and propagating wildflowers. So that would be for people who want to attract the bees and the hummingbirds to their yards with something that they're really going to like and get the benefit of. We don't know on a lot of the hybrids of our native plants whether or not they're going to provide adequate nutrition. It's interesting, monarch butterflies have little chemical factories in their feet. And when they land on a plant, they can tell if it's milkweed or not. But there is one milkweed that's wrong for them, and they will still lay eggs on that, and it doesn't provide any nutrition. It's not one of our native milkweeds. So this is Growing and Propagating Wildflowers, and it's one of the more fantastic books. This is From Seed to, and that of course is New England natives. This is just General Guide to From Seed to Bloom, and that will tell you, let's see, for instance, where am I here? Fritillaria, let's see, Gaillardia, Galanthus. That's an interesting one because that's snowdrops. And it's a bulb, but you start it from seed. One of my most fun ones, which I love to start their hardy cyclamen. The heterofolia and the coum, C-O-U-M, are both hardy in this area, and they're great because they bloom in the fall, but their leaves come out in the spring and make a great ground cover, and they have fantastic leaves. You start them from seed, and the first thing you see is the seed actually swells up and turns into a arm. It builds itself up into that fleshy bit that the roots and the flowers are stored in. Cactus, I mean, you can get cactus seeds, you can get tree seeds. I had my doctor call me once because he had collected the seeds from his dogwood, and he wanted to know how to germinate them. So I suggested he do what we do and what we suggest with Jack in the Pulpits. An old pair of pantyhose, an old nylon sock, stocking, whatever, hang it in the back of your toilet with the seeds inside so that your hands don't become irritated from that coating. And each time you flush, you wash part of that coating down the drain so that by the time you take the lid off again, you have seeds that are ready to be planted. This is another book that includes both seeds and various types of propagation. It'll tell you if something should be propagated from seed as well, because there's some things that are very difficult to propagate without from seed. It's difficult to find the seed. And then one more thing I want to show before I ask anybody if they want questions. These are the bulbs that I got for the greenhouse and for the lights that we'll be handing out. They're very light and they're LEDs. They use less electricity, produce the same amount of light, and last longer than the regular fluorescent tubes. You can see, you could buy a shop light and put 2 of these just in the end of the shop light. And then you have turned it into something that will actually work really well and last. Every year you use shop lights, you can only use a regular fluorescent bulb 1 year because the light that it produces is diminished in that year. So they won't help you with seeds. It won't have enough light to keep things from getting leggy. So, anybody have any questions?